All these color slides are held in these cabinets, which used to be the database, the physical database of all the commercial agents at Magnum. Due to the fact of pulling out and pulling them back in due to editorial researches, the color sheets are in good quality, however, they've seen time. Some of them have shifted in color, but also some have just collected dust. To work on the retouching of these images, we'll have to clean and spot them individually and also make sure that the balance of the colors is back to its original liking. As some of the color slides have shifted throughout time, we need to readjust this in programs like Photoshop. Thanks to the camera system, which has a great sensor for color rendering, it enables us to shift it back to its original colors. Once we capture it, we're working on the raw file so that we have the integral information of what we see. From that file, which is very big in information, we can naturally, in retouching tools, shift it back to its original color. So as soon as we've digitized the sheets, the whole process is to identify the unseens. So here I've identified for you an image by Georgi Pinkasov. Georgi Pinkasov is a French-Russian photographer invited by Henri Cartier-Bresson to Magnum. He likes to say that he's the most professional amateur photographer there is. And his interest is mostly into color, intensity. So to edit this slide film of Georgi from Prague, basically I need to make sure that the exposure of the white frame is correctly set. So I've used here a level layer just to get it correct, and then I'm gonna start diving into the image. When we work on these images, because of the fragility of through time, but also the fact it's being pulled out, pulled in, there will be quite some dust. So what we do is we zoom it into 100%. 100% is the rendering of the image at its real size. And I'm gonna slowly identify all the bits of dust they may be. So as you can see here, there's some marks. So I'm gonna remove it with a healing brush tool to get rid of it. So there I'm identifying everything. As a little technique, I always try to line up both edges of the image and then I scan it down. Once I've done that row, I move on to the next. So here you can see specks of dust. See great quality of the cigarette. There's some dust marks. And I'm here just to scan. These are motifs from the body, so I'm not gonna get rid of that. Here there's some white marks. And then I'm gonna move over to 47000 and I reach on the other side. So once we've retoned the image, basically for my colleague that will be printing these images, I'm gonna just crop it to its edge. You'll see that every time we capture the image, because the slide will not be necessarily completely straight, due to every movement of putting a new slide to digitize, we leave a bit of room so that basically we can crop in the image perfectly so that it's aligned. So here I'm gonna just use the straightening tool. I'm just gonna take one side of the cardboard, straighten. So you see here I'm a bit of a 2-degree angle and I'm just gonna crop it. We're not gonna really retouch the cardboard because some of the cardboard has important information and markings. However, this, you can see there's a speck of dust, so I'm gonna remove that here as well. Et voila. So we have our slide ready to go. There will be some retouching to be made depending on the printing and on the physical matter of the image. This image is pretty much in line with Georgi's look. Georgi likes very dark, intense colors with a high contrast. So here I'll just elevate it a little bit to emphasize a bit more. And then there you go. I have a Georgi Pinkasov slide. this will be a perfectly ready TIFF file for printing in 16-bit. As part of the Czechoslovakia edit, we've rediscovered these amazing Marilyn Silverstone images from the Prague 68 communist takeover. And it's fascinating to see the insane detail, the colors. But you'll see actually that the slide has shifted a little bit. It became a bit warmer. Maybe the magentas are shifting a bit, the reds as well. So in this one, we're gonna readjust it a little bit. So I'm gonna go to my color balance. It's kind of a general overlook, and basically I'm just gonna test and see what would actually make it a bit less yellow red, maybe by adding some blue. I'm just experimenting here just to see how we can adapt this. But here it's not much changes. We don't need to change it too much. So I'll just go into the selective color tool. You can identify the reds, and you see the reds are changing. Here it's a much more saturated red, when here the reds are tinting towards the cyan. So what I want is just a little bit more cyan to make the skin a little bit less saturated. I'm gonna add some blues as well. And there you go. The image is really nice, properly toned. So now we're gonna go again. I'm just gonna crop the slide perfectly. Here you see the white of the cardboard is nicely exposed, as well as the image. The whites are not too blown up. The problem often we have with slide film is it's very sensitive to the light latitude when you expose. So if you burn your highlights, they're completely burnt. Same goes with the shadows. So let's zoom in to 100% and clean up the dust. There you go. So this one you'll see from the edges how much dust actually settled on there. As you saw previously when we were digitizing the unseen, we use a brush. However, here, even the brush isn't able to take off the dust that kind of even imprinted itself into the negative or the chrome slide. So I'm slowly getting rid of the dust. On some jobs like this, it can take hours, and some it can take maybe a few minutes. Really depends on the quantity of dust laid down on the slide. While retouching images for these photographers, whether they have passed or are still with us, when we interpret and retouch an image of a photographer, firstly, we do not manipulate. The only manipulation we do is removing the dust specks, because the dust wasn't initially on the image, so we allow ourselves to remove it. But regarding contrast, curves, color balance, it's really, each photographer will have his visual signature of how he interprets color, how he interprets contrast. The example of Georgy Pinkasov, if you go throughout his work is deep reds, deep blacks, a strong intensity of color, a big depth. So I match those to that look. Some photographers like Marilyn is going to be much more soft, very filmic, but still quite soft, with a nice balance of contrast. Not too heavy, not too light either. When we work with these photographers, or I check with them if they're still with us, and I double check with them, they approve, they even give me some feedback, or if they've passed and I cannot talk with them, I'll often base all the retouching on the books, the exhibition prints, all the past archive they've already worked on. Even if the image wasn't part of the initial edit of those stories, we'll always base ourselves on some references. And then afterwards, it's just a work of interpretation. Our job is to be able to interpret all the looks by all the photographers at Magnum. In the interpretation of color, it has a story. Gorky loves street light, the intensity of the street, the energy they can give you. And some people which are working on more long form stories like Nana Heitman in the Taiga, she uses more of a longer, softer tone of images that enable you to really dream and to travel in those big spaces. The toning always reflects the storytelling. Being interrupted in the process of toning can also stop making you be consistent with the retouching. A lot of the time when I retouch Stuart Franklin, Patrick Zachman, you work the whole set in one go or together simply because you want all images to be consistent, and your eye varies depending the moment of the day and the light that is in the room you're working in. So that's super important to keep it consistent. So here you go. We have the cleaned image at 100%. TIFF 16-bit from native Fuji cameras. Et voila. We've identified this amazing color slide from Ian Berry. Ian photographed Prague in '68, and then he returned in '89, '90s. This is, as you can see on the screen, Distro 90 from Paris, Distro number 5, and that's the second image of the Distro. Second image, that means it's, you know, one of the openers to start this story. And it was called Dawn, New Decade, Czechoslovakia. It's a very strong image, and this one's gonna be very interesting because the cardboard, when you mounted slide films in cardboard, it was very complicated to take it out. Here in this case, for the Distro, we can see it's been a copy. We can identify that this is a ectochrome, not a Kodachrome, simply because the edges are rounded. They're rounded because when we did copies of the original, they used holders that always had round corners. So I know it's not the original image, but it's part of the archive library. In this case, when we digitized, we were unable to shift up the negative because it was stuck in between two pieces of cardboard. This is where I'll allow myself to actually get rid of the sprocket holes of the film, just so that it's not uncomfortable when we see it. So I'm gonna go back to 100%, and then I'm gonna take out the sprocket holes. You can see here that the aging of time made that the glue was here. That's the pieces of glue that was staying. In this picture by Ian as well, he photographed it on flash. The issue with color slide film and flash is that often you might have blown up highlights. So as a traditional darkroom tool, but in the digital era, I'm gonna basically work with the levels layer, and I'm gonna basically paint across the zone that I want to darken. So here, I'm gonna darken just a tad so that the highlights are not too blown up. It'll facilitate my colleague's work when she's gonna be printing for all the toning. So I'm just gonna slightly bring it down just to retain a little bit of detail into the two skin tones here. As you can see, I'm gonna zoom in for you guys to be able to see. There you go. I'm gonna remove the layer. So here you can see it's clearly bright. And then here I'm gonna put it back. You see I can get a bit more information in the skin. Thanks to the sensor, actually, we have a great color rendering that enables us to really go in depth into the skin tones. Something with Kodachrome is the colors are never as beautiful as in real life. When you look at the Kodachrome, you really wonder why this technology doesn't exist anymore, because nothing beats Kodachrome, really.